The words didn't echo at first. They landed heavy, right in the middle of the table, as if someone had decided the evening needed a verdict. This useless freeloader is worthless. She deserves someone at her level. My daughter lowered her head. Not an embarrassment, more like instinct, the kind you learn when you realize speaking will only make things worse. I did not respond. I reached for my napkin, folded it once, and placed it on the table. Silence, when chosen, carries its own weight. My name is Callista Rowan. I am 57. That night was supposed to be a formality, an engagement dinner, a meeting of families. Nothing sentimental, nothing dramatic, just a polite meal, neutral smiles, and the understanding that our children had already made their decision. I believed that was enough. I had dressed carefully. Not to impress, but not to invite scrutiny either. My daughter had stood in front of the mirror earlier, adjusting her earrings with hands that shook just slightly. I noticed. I always notice. Across the table sat her future mother-in-law, a woman who spoke with certainty, as if life had already confirmed her opinions. Before the outburst, there were questions. Where did you study? What do you do? How long have you been together? They sounded polite. They were not. When the comment came, it felt rehearsed, as if it had been waiting for permission. I watched my daughter's shoulders pull inward. I watched the room hesitate, unsure whether to pretend nothing had happened or to look at us directly. I chose neither. I stood, touched my daughter's arm, and said it was time to go. On the drive home, she stared out the window. I kept my eyes on the road. Some moments require comfort. Others require timing. The next day would begin with ordinary routines, familiar names, and a realization that would change the shape of what had already been said. The conversation restarted as if nothing had happened. That was the first warning. So, her mother-in-law said, folding her hands, voice smooth, "Tell me again what field you're in." My daughter answered softly, "I work in project coordination. I manage timelines, and before that, the woman pressed, "Your degree, was it private or state?" I felt my daughter hesitate. "State," she said, "but I worked through school." "Oh," the woman replied, smiling thinly. "That builds character." I watched the exchange without interrupting. She wasn't asking to understand. She was sorting. "And your parents," she continued, turning slightly toward me. "What did you both do when she was growing up?" I said. "We worked." She laughed lightly, like it was a joke we shared. "Of course. I only ask because my family values stability. Certain standards." My daughter reached for her water glass. "She's always supported me," she said quickly. "In everything, I'm sure," the woman replied. "Support comes in many forms." Then she turned back to my daughter. "Travel," she said. "You've traveled much, haven't you?" "A little," my daughter answered. "When time allows." A pause. Exposure matters. Each question landed with care, not curiosity. They moved from education to money to taste, mapping boundaries without ever naming them. I noticed how my daughter's sentences grew shorter, how she began checking my face between answers. Like she was asking permission to exist in the room. I set my fork down. Some people raise their voices to dominate. Others lower them, confident the weight will still be felt. By the time the main course arrived, the tone had been set. Politeness had done its work. Judgment had found its footing. And I understood then that the evening wasn't about celebration at all. It was about measurement. The mother-in-law set her glass down with a deliberate click, as if signaling the end of courtesy. "I've been patient," she said, "but I need to be honest." No one interrupted her. Honesty, when announced like that, demands an audience. She turned to my daughter, then past her as if the words were too heavy to hand directly. "This useless freeloader is worthless," she said. "She deserves someone at her level." The sentence stayed where it landed. No one rushed to clean it up. My daughter lowered her head, not in shame, not in apology. It was the small, practiced movement of someone trying to make herself smaller so the damage would pass over her. I felt the shift ripple outward. Chairs stilled, forks hovered, even the servers paused, sensing something had broken that could not be reset. My daughter's fiancé spoke first, his voice tight. "Mom, that's enough." "Enough is pretending," she replied. "I raised you to see reality. Love does not pay for the life we work to build." My daughter whispered, "I didn't ask for that life." Her mother-in-law leaned back. "Everyone asks for it. Some just don't qualify." I did not stand. I did not raise my voice. I watched my daughter's hands curl into her lap, fingers pressed together like she was holding something fragile inside herself. I said her name once, quietly. She looked up at me then, eyes glassy, waiting for instruction. I placed my hand on her arm. "We're leaving," I said. Her fiancé pushed his chair back. "I'll come with you." His mother waved a dismissive hand. "Sit. If you walk out now, you're choosing poorly." He hesitated. My daughter stood before he could decide. "I'm choosing myself," she said, barely audible. We walked past the table without another word. I felt the weight of their eyes on our backs, felt the relief of movement after stillness. Outside, my daughter exhaled like she had been holding her breath for hours. "I'm sorry," she said, for what I replied, for not being enough. I took her face in my hands. "Don't carry someone else's cruelty like it belongs to you." We left the night behind, carrying silence with us not as surrender, but as something carefully reserved. We reached the car before either of us spoke. My daughter opened the door, then paused. "I should have said something," she murmured. "I should have defended myself." I shook my head. "You didn't owe anyone a performance." She sat, gripping the seatbelt longer than necessary. I started the engine and waited until the doors locked, until the noise of the restaurant was sealed outside. They were all staring. She said, like I was being evaluated. "They were," I replied. "And they failed." She turned toward me. "You didn't say anything." I kept waiting. "I know." I kept my eyes on the road. Sometimes speaking gives people what they want. "What did she want?" she asked. "A reaction," I said. "Proof she could shake you." My daughter swallowed. "It still hurt." "It was meant to," I said. "Cruelty is efficient like that." We drove in silence for several blocks. The city moved around us, indifferent, unbothered by what had just shifted inside that dining room. "She made me feel small," my daughter said, "like everything I've done didn't count." I reached for her hand at the stoplight. "Anyone who measures you like that doesn't get to define you." She nodded, but the weight hadn't lifted. Pain does not leave on command. "She'll think she won," my daughter said quietly. "No," I said. "She'll think you disappeared. That was the cost." Walking away meant giving up the satisfaction of immediate defense. It meant carrying the wound home instead of leaving it on the table. But it also meant control. When we pulled into the driveway, my daughter hesitated before opening her door. "Thank you for coming with me," she said. "Always," I replied. Inside the house, the quiet settled around us. I made tea she barely touched. She went to her room without saying goodnight. I stood alone in the kitchen, hands resting on the counter, feeling the full weight of what I had chosen not to do and what I would have to do next. She didn't come out of her room until close to midnight. I heard the floorboard outside my bedroom creak, the same one that always betrayed her when she was a child sneaking in after a nightmare. I waited until she stood in the doorway, arms folded tight around herself. "Can I sit with you?" she asked. I moved the papers off the bed without looking at them. "Of course." She perched at the edge, staring at her hands. I keep replaying it, she said, the way she looked at me, like I was unfinished. I said nothing. Silence. Used carefully, can make space instead of taking it. I know I'm not rich. She continued. I know I don't come from what they do, but I work hard. I pay my bills. I don't ask for anything. I know. I said. She swallowed. What if she's right? What if love isn't enough when you don't bring more to the table? I turned toward her fully. You don't bring less because you don't bring money. You bring yourself. She looked at me then, eyes rimmed red. That didn't sound convincing to her. It doesn't have to. I said, it only has to be true. She leaned into my shoulder, and I felt the tension in her body finally give. I hate that I froze, she whispered. I hate that I let her see me shrink. You didn't shrink, I said. You survived. She pulled back slightly. You always say things like that, like you've seen this kind of thing before. I smiled faintly. I have. She studied me. You never talk about work, about what you actually do, because it's just work, I said, and because tonight wasn't about me. She didn't push. She rarely does. That has always been her strength and her weakness. I don't want you to think I'm weak, she said. I think you're tired, I replied, and hurt. Those aren't the same thing. She nodded slowly. He texted. He says he's sorry. He says she didn't mean it like that. She meant it. I said evenly. My daughter closed her eyes. I wish you'd said something. I brushed her hair back from her face. I will, just not the way she expects. She didn't understand what I meant. She didn't need to. Not yet. When she went back to her room, I returned to the documents I'd set aside earlier. The ones I had promised myself I wouldn't look at tonight. I opened my laptop anyway. Some names carry weight long before they reveal why. The office felt ordinary that morning. That mattered. I set my bag down, turned on my computer, and opened the reports my assistant had flagged overnight. Routine anchors you when emotions try to rearrange everything. A message popped up from Human Resources. Updated departmental review attached. I clicked without thinking. Names scrolled past in neat rows. Titles, years of service. Performance notes written in careful language. I wasn't looking for anything in particular until I stopped. There it was, her name. The same last name my daughter had spoken the night before, barely above a whisper. The same voice that had delivered judgment across a dinner table with confidence sharpened into cruelty. I didn't react. I read the line again. Operations Division, senior level, long tenure, solid evaluations. My assistant, Mara, knocked lightly and stepped in. Do you need anything before the 9 o'clock call? Not yet, I said. Cancel my late meeting. She glanced at my calendar. The one with legal. Yes. She nodded. I'll move it. After she left, I leaned back and let the chair support me. This wasn't satisfaction. It wasn't anger either. It was alignment. Two parts of my life had shifted into the same frame, and I couldn't pretend they hadn't. I thought about my daughter's voice. What if she's right? I thought about the way that woman had spoken as if worth could be ranked and dismissed in public. Power changes meaning when it stops being abstract. I could have closed the file. I could have delegated the issue away from myself and called it professionalism. That would have been easier. Instead, I opened the personnel profile fully and read every line. Mara returned later with coffee. You look tired, she said gently. I am, I replied, but not confused. She hesitated. Is something wrong? Something crossed into my office that didn't start here, I said. She didn't ask more. That's why she's good at her job. I scheduled one meeting for the next morning. No subject line. No explanation. Just a time. And a name. I arrived earlier than usual. The building was quiet enough to hear my own footsteps. A sound that always reminded me how long it had taken to earn the right to be there. Nothing about my position had been inherited. It had been accumulated. Hours, decisions, consequences. Mara brought in the schedule and paused. You moved your 9 o'clock. Yes, I said. I want the morning clear. She studied my face. Should I prepare anything? No, I said. This isn't that kind of meeting. She nodded and left me alone with my thoughts. I thought about the first office I'd ever worked in, how I used to eat lunch at my desk because leaving felt risky. I thought about being underestimated, how often silence had been mistaken for agreement. Those lessons don't fade. They settle. I could end this quickly. One signature, one call to human resources. Policies exist for situations like this. Conduct unbecoming, reputation risk. The language was already written. But that wasn't why I scheduled the meeting. I opened the personnel file again, not to confirm authority, but to remind myself of restraint. Power used carelessly is just noise with consequences. My phone buzzed. A message from my daughter. Did you sleep enough? I replied. How are you feeling? Still embarrassed, she wrote. Still angry. Both pass. I typed. What matters is what stays. She didn't respond right away. When she did, it was only one word. You. I closed my phone and sat back. Whatever I said today would echo beyond the office. It would shape what my daughter believed about strength. At 10:45, Mara called through the intercom. She's here. Send her in, I said. I stood and moved to the window, not to look outside, but to give myself a moment. I wasn't preparing to punish. I wasn't preparing to forgive either. I was preparing to be exact. When the door opened behind me, I didn't turn immediately. Letting someone wait is not cruelty. It's clarity. I took my seat, placed my hands on the desk, and faced the door. Presence is a choice, and I had already made mine. She entered my office with the confidence of someone who believed the world had already agreed with her. Good morning, she said, glancing past me toward the desk. I'm here to see the president. I remained seated. You are, I said. She frowned slightly, checking the room again, as if authority might step out from behind a door. There must be some mistake. There isn't. I stood then, not to intimidate, but to end the confusion. My name is Callista Rowan, I said. I am the president of this company. The color left her face in careful stages. She straightened her jacket. I didn't realize I know. I said, you didn't know who I was. She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. If this meeting is about my comment the other night, I was under a great deal of stress. I'm sure, I replied. Stress doesn't invent language. It reveals it. Her eyes flicked to the chair. I never would have spoken that way if I'd known. That's the point. I said, you spoke that way because you thought you could. She exhaled, sharp and unsteady. I didn't mean to humiliate anyone. You did. I said, in public. She lowered herself into the chair without being invited. I've worked here for over 20 years, she said. My record speaks for itself. It does. I agreed. And today we are not discussing your performance. Her hands trembled in her lap. Then what is this? This is clarity, I said. You called my daughter worthless. Her head snapped up. Your daughter. I nodded. The one who lowered her head so you could stand taller. Silence filled the space between us. Not the awkward kind, the honest kind. I took my seat again. I'm not firing you, I said. I'm not disciplining you. She looked up, hope breaking through fear. I'm reminding you, I continued, that your authority ends where your character fails. She swallowed hard. I suggest you leave, I said, and think carefully about who you speak down to next. She stood, nodded once, and walked out without another word. I remained seated, hands steady, knowing the balance had shifted not because I forced it, but because it had finally been named. She didn't return to my office after that. She didn't need to. Mara came in an hour later with a folder tucked against her side. "Do you want this documented?" she asked carefully. "Yes," I said briefly. "Factual only. No action," she confirmed. "No spectacle." I replied. She nodded. Understood. That afternoon, a message went out to senior staff about conduct expectations. It named no one. It didn't have to. Boundaries are most effective when they feel inevitable. I left the office later than usual, not because there was more work, but because I needed the space to settle before going home. My daughter was sitting at the kitchen table when I arrived, scrolling through her phone without looking at it. "He came by today," she said. I set my keys down. "What did he say?" "He apologized again," she replied. "He said his mother was shaken, that something happened at work." I met her eyes. "Something did." She studied my face. "Was it you?" "Yes." She inhaled slowly. "Did you fire her?" "No." "Did you threaten her?" "No." She leaned back in her chair. "Then what did you do?" I told her the truth. I said, and I made sure she heard it where she couldn't dismiss it. My daughter looked down at her hands. "I don't know how to feel." "That's fine," I said. "You don't owe clarity yet." She reached for my hand. "Thank you for not turning this into something ugly." I squeezed her fingers. Strength doesn't require witnesses. Later that night, after she went to bed, I checked my phone. No messages, no follow-up, just quiet. Some lessons don't need repetition. They settle in once and stay. The engagement ended quietly. No shouting. No announcements. Just a message from my daughter one evening when I was folding laundry. "We talked. We're done." I typed back. "I'm here." She replied with a heart and nothing else. In the weeks that followed, she changed in small ways. She stopped apologizing for taking up space. She started wearing her hair the way she liked, not the way she thought looked agreeable. One morning, over coffee, she said, "I forgot what it feels like to breathe without proving something." I nodded. That feeling comes back when you stop negotiating your worth. She found a new apartment closer to her work. Nothing fancy. Enough light, enough quiet. The first night she slept there, she called me. I didn't cry. She said, "Surprised. I thought I would." "You already did your crying," I told her. "This part is living. Life doesn't reward dignity immediately. Sometimes it just lets you keep it." That's the lesson I held on to. Silence isn't absence. It's choice. Power doesn't always correct loudly. Sometimes it simply refuses to bend. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to like it, share it, or leave a comment. Someone else might need to hear that they don't have to shrink to be loved. I raised my daughter to stand straight, even when it costs her something. That's what we keep.